Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. Yes, it's that time again, month in review, this time for September. I'll go through each book I read for the month, not from the first to the last book, but in categories. And I've followed that pattern for the whole year so far. Let's dive in right now. The first is classic reads. So each month I have a random picking program that picks 2 classic books for me to read. And I mean classics, not modern classics. Out of those 2 books, I pick one I have to read. What did I read this month? I read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. What did I think? Let's find out. Well, I love this book. It's such a great example of a YA book. It's got adventure, it's got comedy, it's got daring, it's got treasure hunts, it's got great characters. It's so engaging and compelling and immersive as well. I really enjoyed this. I like the characters in particular. I like the action, the movement and the pace. I just liked so much about this story. And despite having great pace, a great storyline, immersive events and great characters, this book also holds up a mirror to society. So we have things about family and village life. We have things about friendships. We have things about superstitions in this story as well. Right through this book, different characters, including the main character, perform little rituals to get good luck or good scores at school or just great friendships or whatever. We have different characters believing in that and performing those rituals. It feels like it's a part of everyday life at the time that this book was written. And I like that because it adds so many layers to this story and makes just the whole world building in this book feel so real. As I said, the characters are wonderful. I preferred actually Huck Finn to Tom Sawyer in this book for different reasons, and I can't wait to read other books in this series. I want to read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And I also enjoyed just the treasure hunt aspect of this book so much. I do like treasure hunts in stories. In this book, I thought it was done so well because it's not only a treasure hunt, it's also a daring escapade in a way. There's also danger there and conflict. There's a bit of darkness in the story going on in that part of the book anyway. Much of this book is a bit tongue-in-cheek with that humour about society and superstitions, different people in the village and the local area as well. I just like this book. There's so much in there to enjoy for young and old readers. And I think with the different layers in this story, adult readers may get different things in this book, the younger readers anyway. So like I said earlier, I have a random picking program that picks 2 classic books for me to choose from for the month. What's in store for October? Let's find out. So the first choice is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Well, not a bad choice. I'll maybe read that. What about book 2? The Iliad. Well, I'm not sure about that. I've heard different things about the Iliad, so I don't know what I'll read. Will I go a bit daring and read the Iliad, something completely different? Will I go classic and read about the Hunchback of Notre Dame? I'm not sure at this stage. I'll find out during the month. The next book is the Random Country Read for September. So each month I have a random picking program that picks one country out of a list of maybe 50 countries at the start of the year. And from that one country picked, I have to read a book that was written by an author born in that country. So, for September, the country was Morocco. What book did I read? Let's find out. I read The Moor's Account by Leila Lamani. Historical fiction, set in 1527, I think. And it's about the Spanish, exploring or / invading the American Gulf Coast region. And they're trying to get there and take a foothold in that area. And the main point of view in this story is a slave. His real name is Mustafa. He's given a different name by the Spanish. The Spanish like to rename their slaves apparently, according to this story. But in this book, his point of view, the way he shows the world, the way he shows what's going on in this expedition, I think it's quite interesting, very interesting, very early on in the book. Early on in the book, I think it shows things in a bit of a darker light. a stark light. We get great conflict at the start of the story. We get violence. We see all different things happening. Then later on, it feels a bit more gentle actually, and it's almost like this character who was great very early on in the book. Later on, he's depicted as his voice of reason, and that felt strange because you wouldn't expect anybody to be such a voice of reason at that time during the 1500s. You just wouldn't think that would happen. But anyway, in this book also depicts, I think, to great clarity, and I think it's very well done in this story, depicts the way the Spanish and even some slaves think of the first Americans, the tribes. And you see that right through this story. They think less of them. They think that the first Americans are beneath everybody. And you see that depicted so clearly in this book. And I like that it's there in this book because it's true to history. It's true to the beliefs of certain people in those times. And you can see that all through history as well. So if you're writing historical fiction, you need that there. It can't be all gumdrops and rainbows. You've got to show what really happened. You have to show people's true opinions, what they thought. You have to show that conflict of ideas, conflict of cultures. Otherwise, what's the point of historical fiction? So I'm glad it's there because it just shows the honesty in the story and the honesty in the world building in this book as well. So for me, this is interesting, this book. I do like the start of the book much better than later on in the story. But I do overall enjoy the storyline altogether. I just wish that the author just didn't seem to pull back later on in the story. I think at the start of the story, the hooks were the conflicts, the dangers, the violence, just showing things, without blinking, basically, in the story. And it just, later on it changed. I don't know why it changed so much, but it changed, and that change was quite stark, I think. There's a great contrast between the start of the story and later on in the book. So what's the country for October? Let's find out. Canada. I have to read a book by an author born in Canada. There's many out there, I'm sure. I don't know yet what I'll read. I'll find out during the month. So now for the monthly prompt read. So at the start of the year, I had a video, and for each month of the year, I have a prompt. I have to read one book, at least one book, from that prompt each month. 2 books have been chosen. One is a must read, and one is a read if I have time. Let's remind ourselves of the prompt for September. With spring in the air, read a book about growth, renewal, or rebirth, whether it's nature-themed, a character's personal growth, or a fresh start. The must-read is The Secret Garden. If I have time, Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. So I read The Secret Garden. I didn't have time for the other book, but The Secret Garden is amazing. I love this book so much. It's a great book for young readers and older readers, and I think this is a book that everybody should read at least once. I just like the overall story and the characters just so much. I mean, it was just a fun and enjoyable read, and it just had so much wonder and magic right through the book as well. Essentially, I think this book is about growth and development, and it feels like everything in this book is developing, growing, or being reborn. The garden's being rediscovered and being reborn. We have characters, main character Mary, another main character Colin, and also Dickon. They're all being, rejuvenated and reborn in ways in this story. Whether it's their personality, whether it's their health, whatever it is, they're being reborn and rejuvenated. And it kind of feels like Dickon is the catalyst of so much change in this story as well. And I like the way all these characters interact. I like what they all bring to the story. They all seem to have different superpowers in a way as well in the book as well. So everything about these characters and this book is just full of fun and wonder and enjoyment. And the read was so special. This is a book I think I would read again. I'll go back maybe in 5-10 years time and read again. Not straight away, but I think leave enough time, and that sense of wonderment and fun and enjoyment and magic will just be new and refreshing again. So for me, magical story, amazing story. I recommend this book so much. So what about the prompt for October? Let's refresh our memories. Embrace the eerie vibes of October with a book that's a little spooky, mysterious, or atmospheric without diving too deep into horror. The must-read is The Haunting of Hill House. If I have time, The Silent Companions. Let's move on now to the random bookshelf reads. So each month of this year, a random picking program picks 6 books from my bookshelves to read. And I have to read them or try to read them all. I have to admit, this month again, I think the 3rd month in a row, I read 5 instead of 6. So one I didn't get to read. Maybe towards the end of the year, if I have time, I'll try to pick those books up and read them before the year finishes. I don't know. I'll try to. I won't say I will because, knowing me as a reader, something else will attract my attention and I'll forget about them. But I'll try to. I'll try to read them. But I read 5 of the 6 this month. What are they? Let's find out. The first was Honor the Dead, written by Stephen Saylor. Historical mystery. And this book is interesting in certain ways. So the mystery in this book, the murders, they're based on real life murders. And I think the crime in this book, or the crimes, are unsolved still. And many centuries ago, so who knows, they'll probably never be solved. But they're interesting because of that historical detail, because right through this book, the author has included real historical facts, and I think even characters, and certainly settings and places, all that sort of thing. I think even some of the murders in this book, they're written to occur on the days they happened in history, in real life. Anyway, by the end of the story, it became less about the crime mystery, and I think it became more about the author and his theory of the mystery and the murders. That's my feeling of this book anyway. But for some reason, even though it's engaging in certain ways, the book itself wasn't compelling. It wasn't a page turner. Part of the reason is, I think, because of too many tangents. We have political and romantic tangents in this story. And they take you away from the core mystery, the core crimes, too often in the book. Those tangents, I think, were a bit long. I mean, I don't mind tangents where they have a purpose, or they're short tangents. If you have a tangent which is adding colour or layers or just some sort of detail in the world building, if they're short tangents, that's fine because you're not veering off too much. You're not meandering through the book too much. You're sticking to the core book, the core story. If those tangents are critical to the story, if they're critical to what's going on, that's fine as well because they're needed. They're needed for something else in the book to make sense. But if you have tangents that go for too long and they don't actually add anything to the overall story, what's the point of that? Don't have them drag on and on because the readers get pulled out of the story. And I felt like in this book, I was being pulled away from that core mystery, those core killings, those core crimes in the story. I wanted to be focused on them because that's when the book was more engaging. But like I said, strong characters. We've got a great structure in the book. We have great historical detail that's multi-layered. But just those tangents were just, I think, too often, and they went on for too long. What Alice Forgot, written by Liane Moriarty. Now, this book is about marriage, motherhood, and memory. That is core concepts in this story. It's also more of a family drama. And I prefer this author, so after reading a few books by this author, I prefer when this author has characters that are a bit darker, a bit edgier. There's something in there that's a bit more pointed. There's more contrast between what's going on in the story. There's something there to get your attention and drag you into some sort of mystery. I like when the author writes like that. But this book is not like that. It has a great premise though. So the main character, Alice of course, she falls over at the gym, hits her head quite badly and loses her memory. So we suspect temporary amnesia. We don't know how long for, but she's lost about 10 years of her recent life. So she forgets. She forgets that she's got kids. She forgets that she's having trouble in a marriage and going through a separation, possible divorce. She forgets all that. She thinks that she's pregnant with her first child. She thinks she's happily married still to her husband. So it causes conflict with many people in this story. With her mother, her sister, her children, with her husband, with her new boyfriend. She forgets she's got a new boyfriend as well, so she forgets all these things. But also in this book, and I thought it was quite clever in how it was done, it's about perception versus reality. So Alice, she's perceiving different situations with no memory of recent years. And she's thinking, well, I do this, I think this. But other people are saying to her, well, that's not really how you think about things because you'd think the opposite. And we have this thing about perception. Alice perceives herself in a certain way, but in those 10 years she's forgotten, she's changed. And in reality, her personality is so different. Her actions are so different. So you have this conflict in herself as well. And it causes confusion. It causes panic in some ways. It causes fear as well in Alice. So those things with Alice, I think, are very well done. They're almost palpable in the book. They're so strong in the story. So despite me wanting more of a mystery, more of an edgier mystery and edgier characters, I think in many ways in this book, it is well done and there's great conflict in the story, but the conflict is more around characters in that family drama. So this book for me is enjoyable for certain things. It's not the best book I've read by this author, but still enjoyable and still a worthwhile read. The Last Anniversary, also written by Liane Moriarty, so yes, 2 books from the same author, picked at random for me to read during the month. Anyway, this book, well, I was disappointed for a couple of reasons. So the first reason is there's a mystery, a cold case mystery, but that mystery should have been more front and center. It felt like it was background noise for much of the book. That's strange to me because the whole plot is based around this mystery, so how can it feel like it's background noise? I don't know, but it does. Secondly, the setting. Much of this book takes place on an island. When you think island, you think isolation, you think atmosphere. Those things can be used just so strongly in a book like this, but it's not. You could take everything in this book, the characters, situations, the events, take everything and put them in any setting, an apartment building, a big city, an Arctic region, a farm, anywhere, and the book wouldn't change. The book would still feel the same because the setting, that environment of the island, the atmosphere you can bring with that, with isolation, not used in this book strongly at all. Very disappointing. Essentially, this book just felt like another family drama. There's so much with this mystery, this cold case mystery, that can be used to drive many things, but it's not used strongly. It's just not used enough, and disappointing to read a book like this where just the author just feels like it's pulling back too much and just basing it on characters and their interactions rather than using the isolation and the mystery to drive many things in this story. So even though the characters are well created in this book, it kind of felt like they were a first draft of what Liane Moriarty can do with characters in other books she wrote later on. That's what it felt like to me. So we have strong characters that serve a certain purpose for a family drama book, but not for a book about a cold case mystery that has strong atmosphere. They're not serving that in any way in this story. The Memory Man, written by Derek Lambert. This has to be the worst book I read for the month, by far. It's a crime mystery with a bit of a sci-fi twist as well. So essentially this book is about life after death, about memory, and about grief. And the sci-fi element just ties into that idea of life after death. They're trying to prove that. Somebody's trying to prove there is life after death and wants to kind of kill somebody temporarily to prove that. That's a sci-fi element. But that is just not done very strongly. Then the mystery just kind of self-implodes in the book, goes nowhere. And when it tries to conclude in the story, it's so rushed, it's so just disappointing. It feels like a bad B-grade movie. That's what it feels like in the book. There's nothing much in this book to feel positive about. And that pains me because as a reader, I like to feel positive about something, even small, just something in a story. I guess in this book, it tries to pay homage, I think, to that hard-boiled detective series style. I think it does that quite well for many aspects in this story. So with that feel of that hard-boiled detective feel, in ways some scenes are written in this book, I guess that's a positive, a small positive in this story. But for most of the book, just disappointing and definitely the worst read for me during September. Ask for Me Tomorrow, written by Margaret Miller. This book was quite interesting. It starts off as a just genuine mystery. We have something mysterious, we have somebody engage the protagonist to solve this mystery, to help out and solve the mystery. And it kind of feels like just that kind of general mystery feel. And that mystery, that idea, is quite well done and very well written at the start of the story. But by the end of the story, it feels less a mystery and more like an Alfred Hitchcock kind of book or movie. Have that kind of feel to it by the end of the story. It feels very twisted. It feels like things are topsy-turvy. There's like a 180 spin kind of feel in this story. Not a bad thing. I think it's great in this book. I think many books may change their tone and feel and not succeed, but in this book, that change, that switch, makes it better. And what I liked about this book is our protagonist Tom, his confusion with the mystery and then with all the events that are occurring all through the story. It feels real because there's no big jumps. There's no leaps of intuition that make no sense. He's confused, the reader's confused. He learns things, the reader learns things. I like that in a story like this because it feels real. It feels like you're seeing things through the character's eyes. Even though it's not maybe first person, it feels like you're just seeing things at the same time the character is. So I like that. I like how stories slowly unravel because in this book, it makes it feel more complex. It makes it feel more confusing, a bit twisted, many layers in the story. And with the characters, the way they're written, for a short book, it's not a long book, for a short book, the characters are very well done. You get inside their heads, basically. You know about their motivations. You know what drives them. You know their likes, dislikes. And I like that in books like this because some authors, I think, have a great skill in writing characters in shorter books. I don't think everybody can do it. I think many authors need a lot of space to develop characters. But Margaret Miller, I think, is very skilled at giving us characters in very short books. So okay, what random books will I have to read from my shelves in October? Let's find out. A dark matter, I'm guessing horror, thriller, something like that. Okay, book 2. The Accident. I'm thinking mystery, thriller, crime novel, something along those lines. Okay, book 3. The Lying House. Well, that kind of sounds like a mystery, a thriller, or a crime novel as well. Okay, book 4. A Stranger in My Grave. Well, I'm kind of thinking mystery, thriller, crime book. So a bit of a theme, I think, during the month. So far, mystery, thriller, crime. At least I think so anyway. Okay, book 5. Tomorrow Belongs to Us. Well, I'm not sure about that. Maybe also a mystery or a thriller. Okay, book 6. The Cult. Well, I'm thinking maybe horror, some sort of dark mystery, or maybe dark thriller. I'm not really sure. But this book has been on my shelves for quite some time, and I keep seeing it, and I keep thinking I need to read it. So I'm glad this has been picked for me to read during the month. So now on to ARC reads that I read during September. A big month for ARC reads, 8 books in total. Let's start now with the first book. Death in the Aviary, written by Victoria Dowd. So, historical mystery. Maybe even sort of a cozy mystery, but not quite. I think more just historical mystery. Said I think maybe 1927, 1929 from memory. And basically we have a closed circle mystery or locked room mystery as well. And the murder takes place in an elevator built in to this big manor house where a family lives. And the people in the elevator at the time were members of the family. So our protagonist in this book is a journalist. And she goes to this house pretending to be from a magazine or something, but she's also a newspaper journalist. So she goes there and she's trying to find out the truth about this murder. And I think in this book the murder may have been a year ago or a few months ago. I can't remember now. But she's trying to find out the truth. The thing about this book is Nobody in the family seems to want her there, so I'm wondering, they don't want her there, but they allow her to stay there. She's there for days, basically. I'm thinking that felt a bit strange because they could kick her out at any moment. They don't need to let her there. She's not a police officer. She's not investigating officially. She's a journalist. That felt odd to me in the book. So in this book, there's some contrast. We have great atmosphere and strong characters. So you think a great mystery, but no, because there are moments in this story that just drag on too slowly. And this book, I think, needed a quicker pace. Maybe just me, I think it needs a quicker pace because there are moments where it just drags on and on and on. And you're wondering, what's happening next? Come on, get to the point. So for me, that let this book down a bit. Because we have a good mystery, we have good characters, we have good atmosphere, we have a good setting, we have a locked room mystery in this elevator in this house, and a closed circle mystery as well. So I think, well, there's many things in this book as a reader that I would enjoy. But there are many things in this book that let it down as well, and mainly at those slow moments in the story. Miss Winter in the Kitchen with a Knife, written by Martin Edwards. A mystery. And I think the author was trying so hard to make this feel like a classic Golden Age mystery. They forgot to do some things. And I think the scope of this book also is just too big. We have a very good and strong mystery at the start. Great atmosphere, good characters, and the mystery overall is quite strong, but becomes too big. Becomes too big for the setting, too big for the book, basically. And I do wonder about that. I think sometimes that authors go too big towards the end. They want to drag big things into the book, international things, things that are a bit more explosive, things to make it larger than life, when the book doesn't need that necessarily. Not every book needs to have this broad scope mystery to be engaging and compelling. But the things in this book I do like are the atmosphere, the isolation, the closed circle cast. All great things in a mystery. I enjoy all those things very much. And I did enjoy much of this book. I just think it became too big later on in the story. Like the author lost control somewhere in the plotting and planning of this book. Maybe it wasn't plotted and planned enough, I don't know. This author is quite a big author. They've written many books, so I'm not sure what went wrong. I think many readers out there will enjoy this more than I did, but I think it was still strong enough to enjoy very much. The Queen Who Came In From the Cold, written by S.J. Bennett, a cozy mystery, and it's book 5 in a series that's called Her Majesty the Queen Investigates. So if you're ever wondering what it'd be like if Queen Elizabeth II, who's sadly now deceased, what it'd be like if she solved murders and mysteries, well, look no further because in this series she does just that. So in this series so far, so this being the 5th book, we have the Queen getting involved in and solving many mysteries. She's not involved in the mysteries directly, so it'd be odd, I think, if the Queen went around poking around in dusty corners and poking around bodies and things like that, or talking to people, interrogating people. She's not involved directly in that kind of thing. She has people helping her, and those people go out in the field, they help her, they come back and report, and she kind of just leads the way with hints and clues and directions. And I like that. It's very well done. I like the way it happens. One of the best things about this series is the characters, especially the characters in the royal family. Now, I'm not a royal family follower, but I like the characters in this book. So the Queen herself is written so well. She feels very human. She feels quite witty in the story. Feels like an ordinary person in many ways. And things she says in her inner monologue are so well done as well in this book. For example, if one was going to lie so shamelessly, one had better do it well. That's just one example of her inner monologues and what she thinks when she's going through things in this story. And it kind of shows that she's so human in the book as well. Also, Prince Philip. So in this book, just like real life, Prince Philip just does things and says things that are outrageous, and you're wondering what's next. What will he do and say next in this book? Very enjoyable, very fun, just waiting for him to do something when he gets into the scenes in this story. Cozy elements in this book are spot on. The humour is my type of humour. I like a dry humour in my comedy, and this book does it very well. It can't be easy, I think, to write humour into stories. I think many authors try to and fail. And it also depends on what humour people like. So different readers like different types of humour in their stories. I prefer a dry wit, a dry humour, and this book has that in spades. A Very Bookish Murder, written by D. MacDonald, cozy mystery, and the third book in a series starring protagonist Ally McKinley. I like this series quite a lot. Now this book is quite short. I'm not sure why it is so short, but it is. And what happens with that short book is I think sometimes the setting is not described as well as previous books, and sometimes characters aren't either. Even the protagonist in this book I think felt a bit thin in this story. But there are good things in this book. So the first murder happens very quickly. So no long lead into the murder. That was great. And straight away it created a fast pace. And that fast pace carried on right through the book. Then the setting, with other characters in the setting, it revolves around this writers group. In that writers group, we have a group of women and all different personalities. There's conflict, there's drama, and all things are happening with those people. And that was great to see in a book like this, because I think sometimes cozy mysteries, they really just take those characters and then make them come to life so well. I think cozy mysteries with those different characters having conflict and drama and bringing about different suspects because of that, it's like bread and butter for cozy mystery writers. One thing I didn't enjoy that much is many clues in this book were pushed towards the end of the story. Now, I'm the sort of reader where I like clues happening through the story, spaced out. Also twists and turns. I like twists and turns spaced out through the book, not pushed towards the end. Just my preference as a reader. So in this book, the small thing in this book, the clues are kind of pushed towards the end. So for me, bit of a letdown, not a terrible thing, just my preference as a reader. But overall, this book is enjoyable, it is fun, and I can't wait to read the next book in the series. The Christmas Clue, written by Nicola Upson. It's a mystery, historical mystery. I wouldn't say cozy mystery, close to it but not quite. The premise of this book sounds wonderful, and this book could have been amazing. Also, it's more a novella, not a novel. But this book, the premise, so we have a mystery. Our main characters are based on the two characters that created Cluedo, that board game. So you think, okay, two characters based on the inventors of a famous board game in a mystery. This could have been fantastic. But it's one of those books where it flows well, so the reading is easy. But after you finish the book, it doesn't leave a lasting impression. Not for me anyway. Quite forgettable and just disappointing, I think, in some ways in this story, because things resolve too easily. Nothing feels earned in the book. Just too easy for our main characters to solve the mystery. And I think having characters based on the inventors of Cluedo, just the possibilities in the story. What could you do? The mind boggles. You could do so many things. The author, I think, tries a few things, but I think not enough. Didn't make enough of those characters in this story. So for me, it is an okay book. It's not terrible. I had fun reading it, but not my cup of tea by the end, and didn't leave a lasting impression. 6:40 to Montreal, written by Eva Jurek. It's a mystery, and this is one of my favourite books for the month. I like this a lot. There's so many things in this book I enjoy in mysteries. We have isolation, so we have an isolated setting of a train stuck in a blizzard. Such a good setting for a mystery. Then we have a murder, a closed room, locked room murder, and also a closed circle mystery, because you're on a train, you're stuck on a train, people aren't getting on and off. And even in this book, for some reason, the carriage doors are locked. So our characters in this carriage, they're our suspects. So all through this book, you're wondering, who is it? Who can you trust? And the way it's written, a protagonist is also doubtful in the story at certain stages. I love books like that, where you can't trust anybody, even the protagonist. And I read a previous book by the same author, and the way that was written as well, the characters had doubt all around them, every character. And I think this author has a great skill in putting doubt in stories, inserting doubt around every character in a book, and making that doubt feel real in a story. Nothing felt forced in this book. Everything feels real. You don't trust anybody. You're wondering about every event. And books like that, I think, are so enjoyable, especially in mysteries. Foul Play in the Foliage, written by Ruthie East. A cozy mystery and the first book in a new series. Now, despite having fun reading this, and the mystery is pretty strong, and we have some okay characters, we have a good setting, and we have quirkiness. Maybe too much quirkiness, but it's there. So despite having fun reading this book and finding it enjoyable, There is a big thing in this book that you can't ignore when you read this. It's that this book feels so strongly influenced or even copied from the Gilmore Girls, that TV show. And when I was reading this, that kept popping up in my mind. This is Gilmore Girls, that's Gilmore Girls. So, what are some of the similarities? I'll tell you right now. Our protagonist Esther was a copy of Lorelai. How is she like Lorelai in this book? Well, she runs away from a wealthy family, runs away because of pressures, expectations, and then goes to a small town and gets a job at an inn, just like the TV show. And also, she's blackmailed by her mother to go to weekly family dinners, just like the TV show as well. In this book, we have a chef called Bunny who just feels like Suki from the Gilmore Girls. In this book, we have Penny's instead of Luke's, but Penny's just feels like a copy of Luke's. We have quirky townsfolk everywhere, including town meetings, all that sort of thing. Also have a guy who just appears at random times, and he feels like that character Kirk as well in the Gilmore Girls. As I said, we have Esther being blackmailed to have family weekly dinners, and we also have Esther being the daughter of a rich family who runs away to a nearby small town and gets a job at an inn. So many similarities between the Gilmore Girls and this book, many of them. You can't ignore them. But despite all those things, this book has good bones, good structure, the mystery is good. I had fun reading it. I do want to read more in this series. I think this series has a lot to offer. I can't wait to see what happens next. I think there's growth for characters along the way. I want to find out what that is. Now for other reads for the month. Books that don't fit a category already mentioned in this video. Not many of them, they're quite varied, so stick with me through them. Stick with me to the end of the video. Okay, the first book. The first book is Chinese Postman, written by Brian Castro. This book feels very unique, but it also feels very disjointed. So essentially, it's about this guy who's retired. Used to be a postman at one stage, then a professor. Now he's retired. He lives alone, and he's in some ways reminiscing and writing his memoirs, his memories, but then also we get told about his current life in the book as well. And it's all just jumbled up in small snippets, small scenes. So it kind of feels like there's no coherent flow to the story. If you want a coherent flow when you read this, you've got to ignore certain sections, certain scenes, and concentrate on other scenes. Pick the ones that seem to be joined together and kind of fit together that jigsaw puzzle, and you may get a coherent flow. You have to do that a few times because I think there may be 3 different flows going through this book, all jumbled up. I kind of don't like this experimentation. I don't like it in this book. I don't like the way it's written. I don't mind having a book that's challenging. I don't mind having a book that takes a while to read. I don't mind having a book that's densely written, but well written, but has a good flow in the story. This book feels like doing homework. This book feels like you've got to fit together multiple jigsaw puzzles at the same time. It does when you read this story. That's quite challenging, I think, when you want to read a book. I don't think I need to solve puzzles when I'm reading a novel. I love puzzles, I love crosswords, number puzzles, I love jigsaw puzzles, but if I want to do a puzzle, I'll do a puzzle. I don't need to do a puzzle when I read a fiction book. Not at all. So for me, it's an okay story. I didn't mind some of the things going on in the book. And when you're isolating different things and getting a picture of the character, I quite like that. As a character, he's very complex with many layers. Sometimes you think, well, I don't like him that much, not that part of him anyway. Sometimes you think, well, you feel empathy for him. And this book makes you feel empathy in different ways for different people. So in that way, it's a strong book. But in many ways, it's not. So I don't think many readers actually will pick this up and enjoy it. I think many readers may give it a go and then DNF it. I read the whole thing, but I think this is a book for a particular reader. And I don't think many readers will enjoy it. I think actually this book is probably going to be a book where it's maybe taught in university or something, and those people will read the book, but many other people won't. Ghost Cities, written by Xiang Lu. This book I enjoyed for different aspects, and then I did enjoy other things. So we have a contrast in this story. It feels like a book of 2 halves, and essentially it is because we have 2 different storylines. The storyline I liked follows a character called Shang, and he meets another character called One. I like their storyline very much. Shang is working in an office, I think, and he gets fired. Then he finds a job almost straight away working for a film director, and his film director is from China, and Shang follows this director back to China and works with him in this big city. And essentially, it's like a ghost city where it's been built, but not many people are living there. And people are being attracted to it slowly, living there slowly. So we have different themes going on in this storyline as well. Themes about modern China, what it is, what modern China actually is. And we have themes about corruption, we have themes about power, we have themes almost about ownership in a way as well in this storyline. And I like the way this storyline went. I like the interactions between Shang and Wan especially. I like their characters. They feel very open as characters. As a reader, you feel like you're welcomed into their minds, their thoughts, into their connection as well. So for me, very strong in that storyline, and that storyline was very well done up until towards the end, where it became a bit too quirky, but most of the storyline is very well written. The other storyline follows an emperor, and I don't know if it's more a fable or meant to be historical. It feels kind of both at certain times, but essentially it's an emperor who feels a bit corrupt. He's very powerful, but also quite corrupt. And also he's trying to kill different versions of himself to retain his power. That storyline feels all about that. But it's also overly quirky. Just too quirky, I think, in that storyline. It has great messages here and there, but it's too quirky, and I think everything else is just beaten down by that quirkiness. So for me, out of both storylines, the Zhang storyline is much better, by far. This book, I think, is still an enjoyable read. I like the read. I like the messaging. I like what it's giving in the story. Very well written. I think this book actually won the Miles Franklin Award in 2025 quite recently, and I can see why. I've not yet read all the long list books from that book award, but I think this book feels like a worthy winner. Maybe I'll change my mind when I read more books from that long list, who knows. But I did enjoy this read to a degree. So next is Never Flinch, written by Stephen King. Now, when I heard about a new Stephen King book, especially featuring Holly as a main character, I thought, well, I have to read this. I just have to, because Holly is one of my favourite characters from recent years. And every book she's in so far, I've enjoyed so much. But this book, not that enjoyable. It's still quite strong, has a strong premise, a strong structure, a good bones, but this is a book, I think, where Stephen King could have gone much darker, much darker. We have two villains in this book, two big baddies, and both of them just feel like too PG in the story. Stephen King could have taken them to a different degree. Darker, more dangerous, more sinister, because they don't feel like that at all in this book. They feel comical, almost laughable at certain times in this story. Disappointing because those two villains could have been so much more. So you can see what I mean about great premise, great ideas, great structure, but being let down by certain things in this story. And speaking about characters, I have to say, unfortunately, Holly in this book doesn't feel as strong as the Holly character in prior books. Not at all. Feels a poor copy, a poor imitation. Like somebody took Holly and read a few things and thought, well, I'll tweak here or tweak there, or I'll try to recall, play a memory game. I can't recall everything, so I'll just put down what I think. That's what it felt like in this Holly in this book. And in a way, it didn't feel like the real Holly, because it almost felt like Stephen King was almost copying Molly from the Molly the Maid series. It felt like that as well. So for me, even though it's still an okay book, a strongish book, better than average, for a Stephen King book featuring Holly, very disappointing indeed. To Poor Islanders, written by Winnie Dunn. So general fiction. And this book focuses on Tongan people living in Australia and their culture. Now, many people in this family were born in Australia, some of them weren't, but it focuses on how they interact with each other, interact with the rest of their community, and also their culture. the cultural differences between their community and themselves, and how their culture also interacts with other people in their community. We have all different things going on in those interactions in this story. Despite this book having interesting things going on, and things about culture and Tongan language and their folklore. So despite having all that and different insights into how people in the Tongan community see themselves and how they think other people see them as well, and also their beliefs and how sometimes different generations in their community struggle with modern ideas, with modern beliefs. And we see that in all communities anyway, don't we? So I don't think that sort of thing is just unique to the Tongan people or Tongan culture. So for me, that was maybe the thing that was more general for everybody in society anyway. But despite having all those things in this book, and they were interesting, the thing in this book that was challenging for me was the writing style. So I think some people may see it as a unique voice, a real voice, a true voice. But for me, it just was a bit challenging to read because that writing style made it feel like this book wasn't very well written. It felt very hard to read with the sentence structures. They're a bit choppy, a bit changey and choppy right through the book. And for me, that kind of let down the experience when I read this book as well. Writing style impacts many things. It impacts flow. It impacts readability. It impacts engagement as well, because if you're being pulled out of a story, or you're finding things a bit choppy or changey, or finding things that just don't work for you in that writing style, you'll disengage with the story because you get pulled out of it many times. I was. So writing style impacts those things and probably many other things as well. So for me, a big thing about this book, a big letdown, is that writing style. But I like many other things in this story. And I think many people could read this and enjoy it more than I did. They may enjoy that writing style. The last book I want to mention is Empire of the Vampire, written by J. Christoph. One of my favourite books for the month, even one of my favourite books for the whole year. This book is fantasy vampire fiction. And I wondered, what would fantasy vampire fiction be like? But it's wonderful. It is a long book, and it needs to be, I think, because the world building in this book, the detail is so good. It immerses you into the story, it builds the world around you, and it's so well done in this book. We have so many layers in this story, so many aspects, so many things just competing, so many characters competing and with each other and with the world. We have religion in this story, was well done and well built. And you think about religion in real life, and all those things are in this book as well. We have history, a lot of history in this story going back centuries. Very well done and very well built in the book. We have just different groups as well, different groups vying for power, competing against each other. They have different motivations, different strengths. We have all that going on in this story as well. Then we have great characters. A great protagonist. One of my favourite characters this year has to be in this story, the protagonist Gabriel. A great character, amazing. Not grimdark, so the book isn't grimdark. It leans towards that though, but he almost feels like an anti-hero, not quite. But he feels so conflicted as well as a character. He is heroic, but you see conflict in him. He doesn't want to be. He wants to go back to his own life or his own things, but he has this conflict where he has to help people. He feels like he has to. He's driven to. Almost feels guilted into doing that in some ways as well in the story. But as a character, he's very complex, very complete, very surprising, and just a wonderful character, wonderful development in this story. And a great thing about this book is the author doesn't hold back from, killing off characters. It could be a favourite character. He'll kill them off. I like books like that because the author makes you think and makes you wonder, makes you guess, and it makes the read so more exciting because you're wondering who's going to go next? Who's going to survive? Will those characters be gone in a few pages? Will they make it towards the end? And it makes those characters, I think, more engaging because you're trying to link with them more completely early on because they could be gone in a few pages. And not all authors can do it so well, I think, with characters being knocked off the page left and right, with surprising twists and turns, with different challenges in the story. This book is just immersive, it's engaging, it's compelling. Great characters, great world building, a great through storyline. I like this book so much. There you have all the books I read for the month. Have you read any of these books? Do you agree with what I said? With my thoughts and opinions? Disagree? Let me know in the comments. If you have different thoughts and ideas about the books, let me know as well. Are there books here you want to read now? Let me know in the comments about that as well and why you want to read them. Are there other books by the authors I've mentioned in this video that you've read and you think I'd like? Let me know, because as a reader, I'm a bit completionist as a reader. I like to read all the books from an author if I enjoy that author. And in a series, I want to read all the books in a series, whether I enjoy them or not. This type of reader I am. And finally, what were your favourite reads for the month of September? Let me know. Did you discover a new author? Did you discover a love for a new genre? Anything about your reads in September? Let me know in the comments below. On my channel, I review books from all different genres. Check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to another video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.